Hello and welcome to Royale Without Cheese, our bi-weekly podcast in which we discuss both the classic and the unknown of Hollywood and foreign cinema from the then and now. We are your hosts, me, Miguel Aido, Leonardo Miranda,
Hello.
and Tomás Ferreira.
Hey.
Three filmmakers and an informal dialogue with a film review each episode. As part of our Silencio show, reviews in both English and Portuguese will be available for different listeners. Today's episode will be in English, and we'll be having a go at David Lynch's Mulholland Drive. Portuguese speakers can head to the Portuguese labeled content section. Don't forget to subscribe, share this episode, or simply give us a like. That's how our podcast can grow ever groovier. Now sit back and enjoy.
Enjoy the silencio.
Enjoy the
silencio. Mulholland Drive is a 2001 surrealist neo-noir mystery film written and directed by David Lynch and starring Naomi Watts. It tells the story of an aspiring actress named Betty, newly arrived in Los Angeles, who meets and befriends an amnesiac woman recovering from a car accident. The American-French co-production was originally conceived as a television pilot, and a large portion of the film was shot in 1999, with Lynch's plan to keep it open-ended for a potential series. After viewing Lynch's cut, however, television executives rejected it, and Lynch then provided an ending to the project, making it a feature film. But, feature or not, how did it contend with the Royale Without Cheese critics circle?
What a picture.
What a picture. What a picture, I'm telling you.
What a picture.
It's gonna amaze the audience. What a picture, I'm telling you. It's gonna amaze the masses. Anyway, I have my cup of joe, like Lynch would enjoy, I would have, It's direct from the hills of Colombia. And he has a company, he has a coffee company, This is how we're opening this podcast, is by saying that he has a coffee company.
Fun facts about Lynch.
Fun facts about Lynch. You see, the dreams are reality.
I never watched the film. I was
Oh, yeah?
I was going through thinking. I really thought for some reason that Naomi Watts was the girl with amnesia, and I was really struck that this wasn't the case. And then it gets to the end.
Are you serious?
Oh, okay. She really did have. Here I was thinking that I was being completely befuddled, but no, my ideas and preconceptions were right.
There's so many things to unpack, and the thing about a Lynch film is that whatever interpretation you may have, it may be at risk of sounding pretentious because of how ambiguous it is. It allows for very elaborate readings of it. At least, the readings I make of it, I find myself threading those lines. But if you keep yourself honest to your feelings, it is what it is. I have my own interpretation, but it can be a deal of things,
But I don't think it's that open for interpretation, because
It's somewhat open, at least.
I also thought it wasn't that open because I'm watching it and I'm like, I think I get it. But then I read other people's, like, what they see. And I'm like, oh, that's valid too. I see some
Yeah.
potential there as well.
I can see it as one of the most straightforward films of his in terms of having a more consistent narrative.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was talking about Lynch in general. Like, if you see Lost Highway, get the fuck out. Like, I am lost as much as the highway,
No, I mean I just meant that generally you understand the third act. And
Yes.
Yeah,
Things sort of puzzle together.
Yeah.
This was the second time I watched it, and I took a lot of ideas from it, certainly. A lot of the symbolism that is implied in the film through characters and places, I can take clear readings from it. So it's not something, whilst Lost Highway, it's much more difficult. But then again, I Lost Highway I saw recently, and for the first time I saw Mulholland Drive, I was lost as well, But it is an experience. The thing with Lynch is that you need to be open to the voyage he's about to make you embark on. As much as a nightmare or a dream, things don't, add up together. But the thing about him is there are some people who that I've met who like Lynch and try to emulate him. And
Bad idea.
I've seen a film of someone in particular who, being a fan of his, I think focuses too much on the fantastical aspect, on the shock value of the terror aspect of his nightmarish scenes. But the thing about Lynch, in my mind, accessibility, is that while he conjures these worlds of where you are kind of balanced between the conscious and the unconscious, as much as night and day, he does has very specific ideas within a world that he knows inside and out, and he does have his own logic. It may not be a logic of, most of the times, a continuous classical narrative, but it is a logic within his world of ideas that builds up a pattern that is recognizable and brings a personality to the film that you can follow. You can follow that and have a reading of that. And so the film ends up being something for you, even if some aspects of it, some scenes are disjointed and you can't quite put your finger on it. You live with at least a feeling, a clear mood of what the film made you feel, what the film was about. So it's not like a random, what you're seeing is not a random, sequence of events. Like some fans rendered him to,
exactly.
They make a film trying to emulate him. And what I'm trying to say is that they make a random, literally a random sequence of events being, surreal and shocking. And I think, and then they say, oh, I love Lynch. That's not Lynch. So, there's a difference. What did you think about Mulholland Drive?
I didn't feel like there was any scene that is like random, that serves no purpose other than to shock you or to make you like, oh, isn't this strange? I think they all serve a purpose. Even the first time I watched, I felt like, what is the purpose? I don't understand. Whereas the second time, just everything seemed to make a lot more sense, even if I don't have answers for everything, and I don't think that's possible. But it felt a lot more consistent. It felt like watching a single idea in the sense that the film is a whole. The first time I watched it felt like there were very disjointed things that didn't really connect at all, and I was lost. But this time it just completely was like fluid.
Yeah, same feeling.
Loved it, absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I mean, I share the same opinion. I mean, I thought it was a great film.
Great film. It's a great film.
And like funny, scary, interesting, like fascinating. It's like all these types of feelings that you get when you watch it. It's so.
I remember the scene where isn't it Miley Cyrus dad?
Yeah, Billy Ray Cyrus.
It's Billy Cyrus. Yeah.
It just appears there like.
yeah. He was trying to get onto films, and he got wind of this film that David Lynch was making. So. His career started with David Lynch, and then he went on to Hannah Montana series.
So, stepping stones.
Stepping stones.
Only getting better and better.
Only better and better.
But the Lynch's sensibility here, I think he's very much interested. What I get from the film in terms of my own interpretation is that he's very much interested in portraying the possibility of a mafioso infrastructure behind the movie business that runs LA and the weirdness of LA. And all begins with that shot of Rita coming out of the broken car after the accident and opens the film and seeing LA behind the bushes of Mulholland Drive, and then she goes downhill and she sinks down into the city, and that's a lovely, lovely shot. And after the darkness of that opening, the car accident, this woman lost and finding herself in this kind of one of these apartments that are just full of history. LA is full of apartments and full of roads that are full of history and stars who passed there and stars who lived in those condominiums. After all darkness of that, you have this opening with Naomi Watts in this kind of soap opera-ish kind of opening where it feels like a diaspora of people behind her going down the rolling stairs of not an escalator, but just, the rolling stairs of the airport. And she just has that wide-eyed brightness, naivete, young actress coming to LA. Oh, it's so beautiful. And then you have the old people smiling and laughing as well with no end. And strangely, he makes the happiness be part of the nightmare quality of the film. And like I said, he plays a lot with the dissonance between the conscious and the unconscious, which has kind of a linkage with night and day. The day sequences, the day scenes are very much the scenes where the reality is more grounded, and you have these people who seem to behave in a more grounded way. But even then, they have these little moments of these little intermissions where there's something off-putting about them, like the smiles. These old people who accompany them, who want to see her strive, or kind of their back home fans. I don't know who they are really, if it is her aunt or not, but they're just
Who?
off-putting and strange.
The couple at the airport.
Yeah.
No, it's
It's
not. Yeah.
it's not our aunt. I don't know
No.
who they are, but
I don't.
our aunt was in Canada or something.
Yeah. So I couldn't quite tell, but I don't remember right now. But anyway, they know her somehow, from back, and they portray kind of their back home fans, I believe, which make that notion of them being their fans from a long time, or constituting some kind of family to her, is even more interesting, because Lynch kind of contrasts that feeling, that heartwarming feeling of her having people that love her and want to see her strive as an actress, with the idea that it becomes something of a fearful thing, because by the end of the film, they are racing after her like rabid dogs, smiling and laughing and never ending, and it's just scary, So then you have this scene after the darkness of the car accident. You have this scene that is daytime. She's eager to find her apartment. She arrives there at the apartment. She's looking at what's going to be her home for a long time, and kind of the beginnings of striving in Hollywood. And I love kind of the subjective shots, how Lynch uses the point of view shots, because there are these kind of floating things. He really likes to explore rooms and the shadowy corners of rooms and strange corners of rooms through this floating point of view. And even when he isn't in rooms, even in roadsides or exterior scenes, he's used his points of view in a floaty kind of way, which is which is to explore this sense of, he always keeps you at bay of the fact that some surreal agent, some unexpected thing might happen, and the way he films the point of view collaborates with that idea. Because even in the most realistic and grounded scenes, like Naomi Watts' character Betty looking, exploring her apartment for the first time, it feels off-putting, it feels strange, it feels scary. You're always waiting for the boogeyman to appear at some instance, because you're following those kind of floaty point of view shots, going through, diving in the room, and you're just waiting, when is it going to happen? When is going to reality bend again, to break again? And it's so impressive that is the narrative. It's not the narrative doesn't come from a normal sense of causality, and you have this character that's going to meet this character. Although you have that sense in the story, there is a balance with that. It comes much more, like I said, from the logic from a Lynchian logic. A surrealist logic that David Lynch constructs, which comes from the visuals he imprints on the film. You already start to understand his language, and at some point, there's going to be a cut, a strange event that's going to break things. You're always kind of waiting on it with anticipation. What's going to be the next thing? And I find that very intriguing and interesting. And sure enough, what happens here is that she finds this naked lady in her bathroom, and they have this off-putting conversation where she very naturally accepts her and starts solving the mystery of her identity. But yeah, what did you guys think? What did you guys think of their relationship together? For example, let's start there. Rita and Betty.
I mean, yeah, it's a reflection of what Betty wants. I mean, at least that's how I interpret it. As long as we're going on the different things we can look at and how we interpret it. I mean, yeah, to me, it's clear from then the third act that they have this tense relationship. Nonetheless, that she likes Camilla, I think that's her name.
It's Rita, then turns into Camilla.
Then what's the name of the other one? The real
It's
real
Rita.
name.
It's Rita. Then it turns to Camilla.
Yeah.
It's
Naomi Watts is Betty. Yeah,
it's Betty. Betty turns into Diane. I kind of see it as two different storylines, really. So
No, but yeah, but the point is that Diane likes Camilla, and so yeah, for me, the fact that they have that connection in real life, so to say, makes me look at the first and second act of the film as Betty looking at Rita fondly and wanting that for her in real life. So that approximation of the two, and that sexual tension that always exists. So it's probably why she accepted her in her house so easily, because ultimately it's what she wanted subconsciously. And yeah, for me, those two were probably the one relationship I most easily sort of understood.
Yeah, I mean,
With the third act, the other ones become a little. Uh, the thing is, you understand the characters in real life and the placing that they have in Betty's story, so to speak. What it is difficult is to understand how the dream actions reflect on the real characters. So, why do you see the hitman killing all those people and then having this sort of almost comedic thing where he constantly needs to kill the next person? It's like you don't fully understand how the actions of the dream reflect the real people, and why he
I
chooses
understood it
to.
a lot more this time, the second time than the first time actually. Um, But surprisingly, Mulholland Drive has a lot of funny things, funny scenes. Now that you mentioned that, like I was laughing my
Yeah,
ass
yeah.
off. The Hitman scene is incredible. Like he kills a lady. I mean, it's so horrible. She's, crawling up the wall. Oh my god! Oh my god! And then she shoots. He shoots her. And he invites the janitor in the room, and he's like, what's happening? And he shoots him too. It's just fucking funny. And then they have other scenes like Justin Trudeau, the Adam, the director character, when he finds his
Thoreau.
wife.
No,
Trudeau,
Trudeau is
not the
the
Prime
prime
Minister of
minister.
Canada, but he's Canadian too. But when he finds his wife in bed with Billy Cyrus, and then his way of revenge is to cover her jewelry in paint, in pink paint. I laugh at that too. So there's a lot of, even another moment that is very funny is when you have Betty goes to that audition with the director, and the director is just a joke in terms of instructions. He says like, only allow it to be real when it gets real. And then he's
That was really funny.
and the other thing was like, that's right. It was contained but humanistic. It's like so
Yeah.
it's so bad because it's the worst kind of instructions you can give an actor. They are not helping at all, and they are like befuddled by him. Like there are no actionable words. They're just stupid metaphors that don't help anyone. It's so funny.
But the end scene of
Yeah.
the end of the scene that they were doing, I found it funny as well because everyone is really surprised, and I think it's the assistant director is like the first one to react. Goes,
Yeah.
very.
I mean, it's
I
beautifully
don't know.
acted. When they get into it, it's a very surprising and delicious to watch. But the mix between the meta drama within the scene, with them acting a scene within a scene, and the fact that the reactions of the people being so funny, it's a weird mix of emotions. It's a very interesting scene, that one. Um, yeah, you know what? I find, going back to the relationships of the characters, I think that, and the idea of the other storylines and the dreams, to me, going back to the scenario that is Lynch exploring this mafia infrastructure that runs Hollywood, and Los Angeles has this weird town full of weird folks and these weird events happening. When I look at this film, I also think of the weird horror stories and crime dramas that have happened in LA, like the Black Dahlia scenario that happened in the 40s, like this up and coming supposed actress Elizabeth Short was her name. I don't remember. That got killed back then. Her body mutilated, made the Glasgow smile out of her. Never found the killer. There is these type of stories that pop up, and it all starts with a car accident and this actress becoming amnesiac. And so there's something of a mirror image there, something of a parallel thing. And with this, I find that this is a tapestry of lives. You have the main story, the one with Betty and Rita, and Betty trying to find out the identity of Rita. But at the same time, you find these other characters like Adam, the director, and the henchmen. The henchmen, like you said, are the less kind of loosey end of the story. But I think they all comment on this, the fact that this whole structure running of the underground world, running the daylight world, the conscious and the subconscious kind of thing that Lynch often plays in his films. Actually, fans do say that this film makes part of a trilogy, a wider trilogy called the LA trilogy or the Hollywood trilogy, which is composed of Lost Highway and Inland Empire. And so there's in which films there's always a sense of, to the innocent brighter world, there's always an underground, grittier world, darker world. And so in this one, I think you have this higher power, this mafioso world, is all brought together by this midget man in this room full of curtains, who is operating everyone. He's operating the henchmen, he's operating the decisions that are being made with Adam, that is being forced to use this actress that they insist on him to use, which they call, this is the girl you must use. And that is a beautiful scene because he mixes the realism and the groundedness of it through the Adam character, who serves like a commentator for the audience. He's the only one who's thinking the scene, who's thinking the interaction with these weirdo characters in a serious, realistic way, like making questions that we would make, like, why would you want me to use the girl? Why am I being pushed to do this? He's making the questions the audience is making, so he's being kind of the anchor point, while the other characters, played by, I think, the composer of the film, Angelo Badalamenti, I don't know his last name, how it is exactly.
Badalamenti, yeah.
Yeah, they are acting all strange, like, he vomits on the napkin, the coffee, the other screams, oh, so, but that mix between reality and...
Bring me my puke napkin.
Yeah, the randomness of it is beautiful because it speaks to these feelings that he wants to talk about, which is fear and threat. He's constantly talking about those feelings that he wants to suggest in the audience, because he brings those feelings through these characters who act like archetypal characters or symbolical characters, like the magician in the Silencio show, or the mystery man in Lost Highway, or what else do you have here? The cowboy to me is the soul of Hollywood. The cowboy to me is the soul of Hollywood, who comes up at night and says, you're gonna do it. If you want to go on the ride, you must accept the ride. No questions asked. You're going to say tomorrow, this is the girl. So he even pushes further the plot. Like the gangsters told Adam, you need to say, this is the girl. So, the consistency doesn't come from a natural, continuous way of the plot. It comes from within the surreal, established world of Lynch, through these characters. And to me, kind of, Betty and Rita are the same person, to me. Betty is who she was at the beginning, young and naive and unafraid, ready to take in this world. And Betty is the one that is vulnerable, who took on this role and is already knows the abuse within the system and was abused. When there's this scene when she's asking about her identity and to try to look within her purse, and she takes out the money. I mean, to me, while seeing the film for the first time, but the first time within the second time, when I see that money has hush money. You start imprinting this significance to what things mean, and to me it's like hush money for abuse that was taken. Instead of taking an identity card, she takes money out, and it feels like hush money for like a couch audition. That there was abuse from a higher executive producer, and she took that to not go further with what happened to her. And then has to go along and try to find out the truth, and have this Diane Stillwell character, or however she's named, to go to this, then again, another condominium of apartments where they find her dead body. And that comes like a midpoint in the narrative, like a cathartic moment of revelation of truth. The dead body, breaks in this kind of dissociative process of identity, because Lynch plays with dissociation of identity a lot in his films. This happens as well in Lost Highway, where characters seem to be other characters, and you have that moment where Rita starts dissociating herself, and she kind of becomes she becomes so afraid of that dead body because she recognizes herself in that actress. And I think the film is a lot about how actresses and actors see themselves in the fate of other actors. I want to be like him. will I be like her? Will I take on another role, or will I be like her? Will I end up dead like she ended up, from abuse, from telling the truth, from going out against the system? And right afterwards, she ends up taking on the blonde wig, and becomes like Betty. She tries to retrieve herself into a kind of naive state to protect herself. That's how I view the scene after seeing that body. She's trying to move away from the fear, move away from the grasp of the system. And then their identity starts merging and merging furthermore, but in ways that you find unexpected. Lynch conjures up this sex scene, this homoerotic sex scene where two come together. And strangely enough, in kind of a self-reflective way, in a meta way, I think that sex scene functions in a way to comment back to the audience how the camera itself that Lynch is using is exploitive of the sex scene between these two female actresses, and it's exploitive of the female body, because that sex scene is unneeded. There's no reason for it to happen. And to me, that's how he's reflecting about it. Like, Hollywood likes to conjure up these sex scenes and, to explore the male body from
Why
a
is it
the female
unneeded?
guy.
I think it's needed.
I think it's unneeded.
I mean, it's like the combination of the
it happens
sexual
in a
tension.
random way. What?
I mean, depends on the interpretation, really.
Yeah,
For me-
there you go. Depends on interpretation. I'm really speaking from my end.
Yeah.
To me, it
Obviously,
happens
but
like
that I assume always.
yeah, of course.
But I mean,
So-
for me, it's like it's a combination of the sexual tension that they had. I mean, it makes sense for me to have that scene there.
But I think me and Miguel have a different interpretation from Tomás. So
Cool.
for us,
Bring it on.
see, I don't know, I don't want to speak for Miguel, but for me, like the first and second act aren't so much, or rather, let's put it this way. I don't see them as the same person. I think they're different people. And there's Diane, which is Betty, and there's Camilla, which is also Rita. And the first and second act for me are like a fictionalized or a dream version from Betty, from Diane, of what went on behind the scenes, or why Camilla became successful and she didn't. There's this underworld, a mafia that is running the castings, and that's why Camilla was picked. This is the girl. Meanwhile, Betty doesn't have that. She isn't picked for that particular role, even though the director Justin Theroux looked at her and found her interesting. And so she's dreaming a reality where she could have been this potential famous actor, but there are forces beyond her that are moving Hollywood in a way that she can't penetrate.
Yeah.
And she can't benefit from that the way that Camilla supposedly did. Yeah, for me, that's the main way I see it. But the other interpretations, yours also, I see it makes sense as well. There's also the idea that these are two different stories. There's the two acts, and then there's the last act, which is just it's like a parallel reality. It's like something different, but he's showing two stories to comment on each other, but he's just using the same actresses. I don't know about that one.
I mean, for me, I don't know. For me, it's so clear that it's the same story, just with elements exchanging each other and characters being other characters, and roles being exchanged.
Is it the same story, or is it like a dream version? Is the first and second act, and then the third act is like the reality?
No, I mean, I think the real story is the third act, and then Diane dies, and then what we see in the beginning is some sort of fantasy that doesn't even happen because Betty has died. She hasn't.
I agree with that.
She has no way of dreaming what happened in the first part, so it's just a fantasy outside of the world of the characters.
That's the way I see it as well, pretty much. But what I'm saying is that I see value in the other interpretations as well, and I think they're valid as well. But to me, it was relatively straightforward in that sense that the first and second half are more like a dying unconscious, like not even unconscious, because it does seem conscious, like she's creating these worlds where she gets to be a sort of hero. She gets to save Rita, who's this amnesiac. But it's like more of a dreamed version, and then the reality is the third act, where she's a loser, she doesn't have success, she's bitter, cynical, she's been destroyed by Hollywood and by LA.
Yes, but even more so the fact that it's sort of a fantasy outside of her itself. Obviously, because she has died, and so she has no real place to be dreaming those things. But also because the film in the first and second act go a lot further than Betty. I mean, we see different characters in different worlds within Hollywood. So there's a there's a very strong comment also, as Tomas said, on LA and how business is done. And so you always have to see it as a sort of general fantasy of this world and this city that's clearly anchored in Naomi Watts, but also goes a lot further in the tiny connections of Naomi Watts, and how this producer acts, and how this guy acts, and how this girl acts, and everyone that is connected to her. That goes always a little beyond Naomi, so it's not completely within herself.
For me, I
just
totally
sorry,
agree.
sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me just
Let
add.
him finish.
Sure,
No,
sure.
because I remember, because I mean, for example, having scenes with Justin Theroux going to his ex-wife's house. I mean, uh, that moment itself within these three characters have nothing to do with Naomi directly.
But it does have to
No,
do
it
directly.
does within the web of connections to Naomi, but at the same time, you can't really say it's a dream thing of her, because these are completely different characters already in a specific story.
Okay, yeah, but the way I interpret is she imagining like something
Yes, what
awful
is happening?
happening to the person who stole like Camilla from her. So I think it's like it is direct in that sense that she's imagining bad things happening to people that wronged her, let's say.
Yeah. No, but it's always in connection to Naomi. I agree. Yeah.
But it is expansive in the sense that there's scenes where she isn't in it. She's just
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
dreaming it. Like it's strange.
To me, it was always. I totally, can see your interpretations and they make sense to me. To me, it hit me like it was all reality, and there were elements of dreamy elements in it, surreal elements in it, and there were just different versions of reality. When they go inside that blue box, and the Silencio show kind of acts like that, the further revelation of truth. And I think the Silencio show acts like a way. Here is where, as well, interpretation can go various ways. But for example, to me, the Silencio show, this need that Rita has to go to the Silencio show after they have this sex scene, if it functions as this further revelation moment where they witness this other archetypal character, other symbolical character to stand for a feeling that Lynch wants to pass on to the audience, which is this magician who introduces a show where there's music, live music, but it's all recorded. So there's performance, but it's all fake. And you have this, then again, another performer, singer, who sings so sincerely that it moves us and the characters within the story, Rita and Betty. But then we find out that it's not really her voice; it's recorded, and she faints and she's moved away from the stage like a sack of meat by the very man who introduced her. I think that has something to do, in my mind, to the idea that it's Hollywood perpetuating its dishonorable and dirty acts that happen under the table, and bringing actors and actresses to life and success, but then doing everything in chase of money, changing faces, changing the faces come and go, but the deeds are the same. The evil deeds are the same. That's what I mean to say. And so that's how it felt, that spectacle to me. And it comes to them. It hits to these characters. It hits these characters of Betty and Rita so strongly, as much as the discovery of the dead body was to them a very strong moment, that they didn't find the blue box that goes along with the blue key that they find at the beginning of the film. And when they open it, the going inside the box is like going inside some kind of secret of shame. So it feels like a flashback, but to me, it's this weird moment in filmmaking, film history, where something that feels like going inside a flashback, it actually is a flash forward, I think. You see Betty, what she becomes in the future. So it's still reality to me, going back to that thing that it's all reality to me, just with surreal elements into it. And she's now called Diane because in Hollywood, you change her name to something that is more fitting with the industry. So now she's called Diane, Diane the superstar, but her actual name is Betty. But she's different. She's so different. She's wasted, down by the industry. And Camilla, before Rita, is kind of, how do I see it? It's kind of, Diane to me is denying these bad ways of the film industry, is denying the favors game, the dirty game that happens under the table. And it's kind of, she has that, and to me, Rita or / Camilla is still herself. Is that sex scene is her having a dialogue with herself, with Camilla, this side of herself that says, no, you can go the extra mile, you can find the secret path, you can kiss a director while nobody's watching and get what you want. And the immediate scene after that is her full of jealous for this other actress, Camilla, who serves as a trope to the other path she's not very comfortable in taking, but she knows there is a possibility and that a majority of people, or I don't want to say majority, but that other people do to get what they want. You have that very dirty scene of the director coming onto her, kissing her within the scene. His excuse is a dramatic scene, and she just starts kissing Camilla to explain to another actor how she should kiss. And then finally afterwards, like you said, the other storylines, all the other characters come together in this party house. And she literally said, she opens the car door to Naomi Watts, who, another argument for me to them be the same characters, that Naomi Watts, Diane, Betty is under the same moment that we saw at the beginning, just before the car crash. She is in the car with these henchman typos, and she's saying, where are you going? We shouldn't stop here. This is Mulholland Drive and whatever. So these female characters all seem to me to be the same facets of the same person at different stages in her life. And Camilla opens the door and says, hey, forget that, come to the tree house, come where the cool kids are, It's so corny to a point, but so effective in that sense, because it's like, there's a secret path, you will love it, It's so much hinting at the fact that this is not very correct, but we can do it. And then when they go upstairs, everything is so lurid and wrong in a way, because all the characters that previously were innocent, like Adam, the director, who kind of seemed like a cool dude going against the system, and Rita, who was trying to find her own identity, and Betty herself, who was so naive, now they are so full of skepticism and wronged by the system, and are trying to find ways to get in, and they are desperate. Even Coco, who now performs another role, there's a point where Betty, now Diane, says, oh, Camilla, help me get up in my career, get up and going. And then Coco taps her hand saying, that's okay, sweetie. Like, she understands the implications of what that means. Like, there was some abuse. And yeah, they're completely different characters. It feels like they were eaten up by the system.
Yeah, valid
thesis. This to complete my thesis, my interpretation, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the two just complement each other too nicely not to be
exactly
one a reflection of the other, and I don't know, just
there's too many rhymes between the two. There's too many direct connections in the two sides of the film that to me make it very apparent that one is again a dreamed or a fictionalized idea of what could have happened, and then the other is the reality. What I don't understand in your theory is, so you think Diane and Camilla are the same person?
Yeah.
Okay. But that makes it even stranger, because she's interacting with herself, or is she also how is it reality then?
And that's it. I think it's a banded reality. That's how I always kind of interpret Lynch. It lives within dream and reality. It's a weird deception of reality. Things are real, but the characters are all off-putting and strange, and there are everything that is surreal is symbolic. It's utterly symbolic, and although functioning in the real world, and then these interactions between these ever-changing naming characters, Betty, Rita, Diane, Camilla, they're all the same people at different stages in their lives, because I mean, just the fact that they change, they make themselves wear the same wig at one point, and then she's becoming both of them Betty, like Rita becomes Betty, the same innocence that she has. And then at another point, she's in the car that Rita was at the beginning, right about to get shot. I don't know, it just feels like the same characters rhyme together, and that they are the same person to me. Just the fact that there's something to do with the naked body as well. The fact that he goes to this, he goes all the way into these sex scenes where they both become bare naked and become the same. The same female body meshed together more than once. It just attacks my brain has saying they are merging together. They are
So
they're
she had
becoming more
sex
and more.
with herself.
Yeah, I don't interpret it as like real people. I'm not. It's weird to say. I don't interpret like these real events happening. Although I say it's reality, it's a bent
Okay,
reality.
yeah.
Like it's like it's all a conversation within a person's mind. It's like I'm watching a person's brain happening here. This whole film is a person's brain. I
Okay,
think.
that makes more sense. When you say reality, I'm thinking more like literal, like a literal reality. But when you say reality, it's more like that. The whole film is a consistent.
Yeah. Let's say.
It's
Yeah.
not. There aren't separations.
It's a consistent world. There's no reality dream now. It's like a consistent world of strange, off-putting moments happening that have their moments of shifting and becoming other worlds within the world, the one constant. But yeah, it's surprising how the film that it is, one of the films that is Mulholland Drive that has most consistency in terms of a narrative causality, brings up still different interpretations. We were hoping for one consistent. At the beginning of this, we were saying, "Oh, it's very consistent." No, we have different interpretations. So, but I can totally see yours as well. But for some, I think part of the appeal of Lynch that is so interesting, having seen a lot of his films, Blue Velvet, Lost Highway, this one, Eraserhead, is that for someone who has such a boyish flair and charm in his voice, if that brings such a high, evident contrast with his films, where the image of sex and nudity is so pungent and real. I think that there's a contrast there. He's incredibly dirty in his films. It's kind of, and he goes there oftentimes.
He's
In Lost
going
Highway here.
to the depths of his mind and going like,
Yeah.
here are my most perverse ideas. And he's very revealing of himself. And I think that's that's not every director does that.
David Fincher, who get a load of this,
I mean, very different.
Yeah, very different, very different. But I was just thinking about that line that David Fincher says.
Yeah.
I like people are perverted, and I like perverted people. So, and if as an artist, filmmaker, as a director, you want to shy away from your real concerns, you're just fooling yourself, and that's what you must do. That's what David does. He's honest with himself and puts that out there.
Yeah, but David Fincher is more. There's a play with the audience about that perversion, like very direct. I think Lynch is much more a play with himself first about putting these like things.
Yeah.
And then of course the audience comes in, obviously, but it's different.
Just a shout out to Angelo Badalamenti. His music is great.
Oh, his music is great. You should watch one of those moments where he's talking about how he made the Laura Palmer theme for Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. The way he discusses his collaboration with David Lynch, how David Lynch describes in terms of feelings what he's seeing and imagery, and then he converts that into music. And he's like, that's great, Angelo.
The trees, Angelo.
Keep going, the trees, the darkness. Oh, Angelo, that is so great.
But now
it's
there's
beautiful. It's beautiful.
I really like the sort of the sequence that starts the film with Naomi Watts' faces, and the music. I really appreciated that. And then also at the end, when it appears over the town of LA, I really thought that was going to be the last shot of the film. And I thought it would end very well. But then it gets to the movie theater again, and I was kind of disappointed. I wish it had ended on the previous shot.
Yeah, it's a very striking image. With the bright lights, right? With Naomi Watts.
Yeah. I see what you mean. That's pretty cool.
It's true.
Lovely image.
Yeah, and the first, like the people dancing in the beginning, that is so
Yeah,
strange.
it's so strange. I cannot place that very well.
Now I just remember. I also watched this film in the Cinematheque, Portuguese Cinematheque,
Oh wow,
and I
really?
got in the moment that the people were dancing. I was like, "Is this the wrong film?" I was so confused. I got a bit
I
like, yeah.
bet, I bet. Yeah, I mean, my take on it, is that because you see these people dancing, which are really two different couples repeated at different places in the frame, in front of this pink backdrop that feels like a green screen of sorts. There makes no commitment to be another reality. It's just the admitted green screen. I think it's kind of bringing that special taste of Hollywood has a certain connotation with its golden age. Makes you jump to the 50s Hollywood and the 40s Hollywood. So these people dancing in the way they are dressed up and the way they are, and the music and all, brings me back to that moment. These kind of youngsters in the 50s dancing, but the backdrop doesn't admit to any fake reality. It is the green screen itself. So to me, this whole mesh between what's real, what's fake, and the performative aspect of it comments on how Hollywood it is, that it's trying to make you buy this whole dream, of becoming this great actor or actress and having this, great career in front of you. But oftentimes you are hit against the wall of these abuses and things that shouldn't be in there, and unprofessional behavior, and making favors for someone else, and being made to say, this is the girl, this is going to be the girl, end of question. So that's what it acts up like to me. Like it's kind of a little note in a prologue, but yeah,
Yeah,
may
sets
or may
the
not be.
mood.
Yeah, sets the mood.
For me, it was a part of the film that they were making. Then afterwards, when we see Justin Theroux's character,
That makes sense
Maybe,
as
because
well.
it
maybe.
That
kind of
makes sense.
seems like the same sort of film because
Yeah,
they were
and
singing
it
in the
can be both
studio.
things. It can be both things. Yeah, it can
Yeah,
be both.
but yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that the aspect of the film that criticizes Hollywood and that whole environment, I think it's really interesting. And to go through all those layers, I mean, it warrants another watch to really understand everything that
Yeah.
he's criticizing.
The one scene, the one dream sequence that is definitely the one that I cannot place in any shape or form is the one at the diner with the guy facing his monster from the nightmare. I don't know what to make of it.
Well, I think in the sort of reality version, she sees that man, and she probably was a bit drugged anyway. So maybe it's just something she imagined that guy would be doing.
Mhm.
Yeah, honestly, it's kind of a strange thing to
That's the one I cannot
distill.
quite place. There's a point in the story where she enters in the description that guy has of his own dream, that I'm sitting here, I see my friend over there by the counter, by the cashier, then I go outside, I see them. So there's a point in time when she's discussing with this hit man that we see early in the film, a possible hit on Camila, to kill her, to kill this actress she's envious of. There might or might not be her other self. And she starts seeing the same things that the other guy explained. Oh, I see you by the counter, then I go to the other side. And the monster appears in the end. But I don't know what to make of it. I just to say that I don't know what to make of it.
I think that scene, the first one in the diner for me, was what immediately pointed to the fact that this is either a dream or a fictionalized version, because they're talking about dreams, and the way he films it with the floating camera.
Yeah.
For me, it seems to indicate like an unreality, a dream reality logic, even. So that's
Yeah,
really
even
it.
the image itself, that those bright white colors, like in Vertigo. I mean,
The
especially
fogginess.
in the beginning, it's full of that whiteness and brightness of the lights.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it
And
is strange.
in terms of production design, Lynch has a real love for the blue and red colors in everything, like nails, curtains. He has a real love for curtains. If you watch his films, like even in Razorhead, Blue Velvet, right here, Lost Highway, Mulholland Drive, he has this interesting appeal or attraction for these non-places. Places that are not fit for human needs. He conjures them up because he he really is able to hone our to understand and hone these irrational fears that people have of things in our daily lives that seem mundane or innocent, that we don't bat an eye to, but that he puts in center frame in his films. And what I mean by non-places is that, like I said before, he films like in Lost Highway, the shadowy corners of living rooms through these floating subjective POV shots, and you're made afraid of them because you don't know what's coming next. Or, for example, he has this, like in Twin Peaks, he has this kind of a showman's room where it's full of curtains, and you find there the mafioso on his chair. And it's a room that doesn't make really sense for human needs, like a kitchen or a living room would, where and understand what the purpose of the room is. He's just there, and there's just no apparent connection between that talk show couch, the talk show desk, but then that, there's a man behind the man that is the mob boss who is in a sort of wheelchair, and the whole curtains around. And there's this mirror division separating the men from. It's a weird situation. And so he understands that there is this fear around these non-places like corridors and hallways, where they're just places of passage, and places that are, very much act like labyrinths, because of their lack of purpose. At least as, it comes from a very personal perspective, because I've always seen those places that way. That's, for example, how Jodorowsky's films like The Holy Mountain hit me. In his production design, Jodorowsky makes these places that, architecturally speaking, don't make sense. Like you enter through one place, there's no other exit, and people enter within this room that is built like an eye, and it's all very colorful. Or he builds these places in the architecture that don't really serve a purpose. It's very, how should I put this, nerve-wracking. I find these places are very nerve-wracking because you cannot quite place them in the sense that you would place, oh, this is a kitchen, I recognize this. They're not recognizable. That's what I mean. So they're very off-putting in that sense. I don't know if you feel the same or if you see the same, but yeah, that's what I feel about those places. I think he really understands that human feeling about strange places and the fear of the dark as well. He takes a lot of advantage of that. A lot of his cinematography plays with chiaroscuro, and some of his best moments come from that, I find. Like when Betty faces that neighbor of hers that comes in the night and says, who's that inside your house? I heard of a car crash. It's suddenly everything was lit so perfectly and shiny and flat lighting, and suddenly everything is in dark and bright. So he's really in tune with that sense of human beings.
I mean, I didn't think so much that this film had non-places or places rendered unrecognizable. For me, it was more like Lynch's ability to turn normal places into places where strange things can occur, and every sort of division of a house or a diner, pretty much every place he uses can be a place where things happen that seem strange, and it's always a mix of how he frames it and the lighting and ultimately the acting, because I mean we kind of went over this, didn't go over this, but every character acts as if they're sort of contained. It's a strange way of acting for me.
Yeah, it's definitely not like a realistic sort of acting. It's
Yeah,
like it is. They feel dreamy, it's that thing that's the best
exactly, they feel dreamy.
adjective.
And so it's that with the places and the lighting and everything that turns regular places into fever dreams, sort of things. And to me, more than they being particularly non places, I think.
But no, but when I say non places, it's it's a comment that is very localized. I'm not saying that this happens consistently and throughout the film. I think it is. I agree with what you said. When I say non places, it's very localized. For me, it's the moment in. I do this as a comment to his whole oeuvre. The whole work of Lynch, and in this one in particular, I only noted in two moments. When you meet the mob boss that seems to control the whole of this evil around town, this midget inside this room full of curtains. So that's one. And then when he transforms a mundane place like an apartment in something that is just off-putting and unrecognizable. Because when he does the floating subjective POV thing, because it's so quick and so floaty,
yeah.
you know, you see mainly are corridors, and corridors to me are always kind of weird places to be in, because they easily can be transformed into a labyrinth. Because if you what what you're seeing are always corridors, and you're cutting corridor after corridor, and you don't enter in a living room, you don't cut to a kitchen, you feel lost, you feel like you're consistently lost in with no exit. That's kind of how I felt the whole of the sequence of the Betty character exploring her apartment.
That's all for today. If you'd like to reach out and suggest a film for the next episode, you can find us on the podcast official Instagram and Facebook pages. Don't forget to subscribe, share this episode, or simply give us a like. That's how our podcast can grow ever more groovy. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.
Bye bye.
Bye 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 bye
Bye-bye.
bye.